Thank you all so much for being here today. We are going to have a talk back for the two films that we just saw, Whala and We Live and We Learn. Please give a nice round of applause for our filmmakers here. All right, so I guess let's just get on the line and introduce ourselves to kick it off. If you want to give us a brief summary of your project. We all saw them here, but those watching the talk back might not have seen them yet.
Sure. So I'm Kareema B, and I created We Live and We Learn for Kindred by Parents, and it's a web series that gives multiple generations of different Black family members a chance to talk about different topics as it relates to life, to provide support and solutions for those raising Black children.
My name is Marina Marzo, and my piece is Whala, an Italian dad talk show, which is an Italian dad decides to write his own late night talk show, and it's got monologues and a craft of the day and word of the day, and then he interviews very niche 70s figures. And I just wanted to say, excuse my voice, I'm not usually this Demi Moore sounding, but I just have a little bit in my throat, so heads up about that.
I'm Emily. I also worked on Italian Dad talk show, but I was co-producing, so I could talk about like production stuff and helped on set and everything. But yeah, it was based on Marina's dad. She's the creator behind it and everything like that.
Yes, yeah.
Clearly we love our dads.
Yeah. Yes, very much so. Very dad-centric, this blog.
Dad-inspired. Absolutely. It is, because Pop screamed as well, right? Yeah, it's very. Did you do that on purpose? You did do that. Okay, so that's to reveal the magic. I'm just going to ask a question to both of our teams here about what kind of impact you were hoping that your work has on its audience.
Yeah, so for me, I really just wanted something that, even though, yes, it features Black families, that anybody who's watching can relate to it. Right, we all have our different family members. We all have different things through life that they've taught us, or things that we've learned, or maybe conversations that we have yet to have with them. And so I was hoping that it just encouraged that for the audience.
Our work was a little more, the idea kind of started because I always felt like my dad should have been a comedian, but wasn't. And the kind of like life advice and things that he wanted to express, I felt never really got out of him, if that makes sense. And so I had always wanted to do a piece with him, just to kind of highlight that. And part of it too for me was just, a big thing that we discuss a lot was having an immigrant dad. They have such a particular sense of humor that's hard to relate to other people. It's usually based on classical references. It's usually based on very niche things, commercial catchphrases. And so that was a kind of a sense of humor that I really wanted to highlight and try to bring to the forefront. Because that's something that I really identified with that I never really quite saw, and something that we spent a lot of time talking about, you know, kind of how to bring that to light.
Great segue into my next question, which is actually about humor for both films. One of the things that I noticed in the family dynamics that you were interviewing, Kareema, was the element of humor, right? Of course, like all families have it, but because you were making a series specifically about the Black experience in the United States, what do you feel the Black family does in terms of humor that other cultures or like subsections of cultures might not understand?
Yeah, well, that's how we express our pain. Laughter is within the fabric of definitely the Black family. And my goal, even in the people that were featured, even though, yes, they do live in the United States, some of the people are first generation, or, you know, come from different family dynamics within the African diaspora. In total. And that was also my goal, to show like, hey, we're not so different from each other, right? But yeah, laughter was definitely for me important throughout, because a lot of times, like, you know, the topics can be pretty serious. And my grandmother, that is my grandmother.
Yes, give it up for Grandma.
Yes, Miss Ann Walker. She is that's exactly who she is. It probably even worse. She was on her best behavior that day. But growing up, like going to her house, which I can't wait, Thanksgiving's coming up, we talked about some serious things, but she always managed to just completely wrap everyone around her finger with her humor and use that to teach us lessons and to guide us. And to even your inspiration with your dad, like I always wanted to give my grandmother a platform because I think she's the funniest person in the world. So that was my way of trying to like weave it all together and make a show that was definitely inspired by her.
Amazing, thank you so much. Marina, my question is similar to you, because it's very interesting to hear someone speak about, right, the humor of people who pick up English when they move to a country that speaks English, right? It's like catchphrase based. It's things you might not pick up on as someone who grew up there. So my question for you is about the process of observing your father to create a character out of him, and then try to take these things that most younger audience members, perhaps the ones watching web series online, wouldn't quite understand. Like the news anchor sketch, it's tough for people to understand because I don't know who half those news anchors are, right? So what was that process like?
Well, observing him for a lifetime from the womb, taking all that juice, if you will. Yeah, it was something that we talked about a lot, was how to make these things relatable, and you know what is the best way to explain these things without having the whole thing be very expositional. And so it honestly, like the thing we just kept coming back to is like, how do we make this dumb? Like, how do we make this dumb and fun? You know what I mean? In like a lighthearted way. Like my dad loves news anchors, and it started because he talks to the TV. Like, you know, he'll put Rachel Maddow on, he'll be like, Rachel, not like this. Not today. You know what I mean? And, and so I was like, this idea of, talking, feeling so personal to these people, like, yeah, we might not know these people, but we get from the picture what they are in relation to the boat. And so it's like, we all know what boats look like. And so that was a big thing. And then sometimes we just were like, this is our one. Like Capital One, I was like, no one's going to get that. That one's just for me. You know what I mean? Like, somebody will laugh at it, but that one's just for me. So, it was a little bit of both, but we definitely, we kind of really started on what were the things that made us laugh, and then when they were a little bit more high level was like, what's the cushion that these things need? Ted Neely's another one. I bet nobody here knows who the hell Ted Neely is. And so it was like really setting up how to explain Jesus Christ Superstar and all these things. And then how do we do a sketch that's not related to him at all, so you can still have fun with the Y button and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was definitely a line we had to draw between, and how does this relate to other people versus are we also honoring this character that we've created and based on? And there were certain jokes where it's like, I just need this one, or like, give me this one. Like, he's just going to say it, and that's just going to be his character, and no one's going to understand it. But like, that's just going to be his thing, is that he thinks it's really funny, and you start to sort of like root for him a little bit. It's like, he's having a good time. And there were certain jokes that I found really interesting where, it wouldn't be exactly the behavior that like my dad might do, but I was like, oh, that is the kind of thing that my dad would think is funny, even if I don't totally follow this joke. And so there was something sort of familiar in it. There was a different episode with one of the crafts or one of the sort of segments is like how to get to the airport on time, or like how to
wake up your kid early.
How to wake up your kid early, and has a lot of like little bits about like doing the travel plans, and it's all like 5 hours earlier and all these sorts of things that like I was like, yeah, that's very relatable and reminds me of my dad, even though the little specific jokes that he was making were very specific to that character. The entire sort of idea of it was relatable. And so that was a way to I could laugh along with it, even though these are jokes that I sort of didn't pick up on or didn't really understand, because the concept of like, yeah, okay, getting me like waking up at like 5 a.m. for my, noon flight. He's like, oh yeah, that's something my dad did. That was a weird thing. And then all the other jokes sort of come from that, and you start to root for that character a little bit, even if you don't follow the jokes, because you're like, oh, I kind of see my dad a little bit, and I just sort of like that he has this platform, and I like that he's having fun with it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, you guys. I have some more questions I can ask, but does anyone from the audience have a question they'd like to ask one of our filmmakers? I feel like the jazz music should be playing in the background. Okay, so Kareema, I have a question for you. Pardon my delay. one of the things that I noticed, I'm going to say this, and I don't mean to insinuate the opposite is true, but I noticed that in a lot of the interview clips, people were talking about, my parents never did this for me, so I want to do that for my kids. It's actually something I've been thinking a lot about myself over the last few months, the idea of like generational trauma, or like things that we need to heal from our childhoods. If you heal it for yourself, you heal it for your ancestors, right? All of these things are in alignment. But what I think sometimes I don't get to hear the stories about is people talking about the things that are ancestral that give them power. And with the Black community in the United States coming from a background of slavery, I was wondering if you could speak to that experience. Maybe there was a favorite moment in an interview you did where someone talked about something from the past that they still carry with them, traditions or something similar to that.
Yeah, and I think I get where you're getting at. So I'm happy that you even picked up on that, because this particular series is connected to an entire website that has articles and stories for the Black community under parents.com. And so when this first launched at the top of the year, our big topic was generational trauma and what we pass on, and legacy. And so in video form, I had to make that come to life. That was my assignment, so awesome. And so that is why a lot of what you hear is what they did versus what I'm going to do. But the nice part is that this is only one episode. There are 4 in total, and so we talk about all different kinds of topics: love, dating, family dinner, even the tradition of coming together at the table, the tradition of, how, we allow someone to come into our space, and boundaries, and all kinds of things that all the different people that you see there say that, no, I definitely want to keep the pride that my family gave to me and pass it on. I definitely, or the way that my parents, were married and stayed together, and, whatever. I also want to, pass that on. Or, there were so many different topics. Or just in the way of how, I think making decisions was another big one that I loved, because I appreciated like the influence that, let's say, my dad or other fathers talked about how strict their parents were, but they realized like, oh, maybe, and even my dad was strict, but still, it's like, but he realized even in that, like, there's some parts of that I want to keep, and some parts of that I want to let go. So the goal, especially with Kindred as a brand, was not to always focus on our trauma, because we know that exists. We know what the past is. We've been exposed to that in video form. It was also to give it a balance of how we want to move forward, what we want to do better, and what we've learned.
Well said. Thank you so much. Marina, correct me if I'm wrong, but as an actor creator myself, it feels like your production was quite small.
Yes.
Is that accurate? Could you speak to the process of filming something in which you play multiple characters and multiple roles behind the screen?
Yes. Planning as a friend. It involved a lot of planning and figuring out the best use of our time and space and all the different props and all the different and too, I remember a big thing for us with the different characters was really making sure that they all looked different enough. We have another character that kind of has shaggy hair. We were like, okay, well, how are we going to really make him look really different? So I guess I'm a very visual person. I like to really see the piece in my mind first and then work backwards from there. So I really understood how I wanted the characters to look and what I wanted the piece to look like going in. And then working backwards, okay, what am I going to need to do as a producer in terms of what are the materials I'm going to need to get? And then a lot of late nights on YouTube videos, figuring out okay, this is a kind of impression, this is what I'm trying to evoke. But it was a lot of planning, a lot of planning just going back. I mean, we originally had 10 episodes as well, and we planned all these different bits for all these different characters, and then it was figuring out which are the ones that we'll have the most fun with as well. So yeah, it can be tricky playing a lot of hats, but it's nice because I felt, especially because my father is so close to me and is of me, that being so hands-on about it better translated to kind of him being hands-on about it. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm holding the camera, but he's holding the camera. And that kind of relationship of like, this is a love project of his. So if it's, you know, it kind of translated, I think, very well to the framing of the piece.
Yeah, I would say like one thing we also thought about was because, you know, she has to also play the other characters as well. And Marina has a lot of background doing character writing and comedy characters and things like that. That was something we worked on, was like, how do we make him feel a little bit less alone up there? You know what I mean? And like, how do we inject that? And that's where these sort of guests came from. And doing the work that you talked about like mannerisms and different things to sort of like make separate characters. And it was interesting to also watch you develop these, because I felt like as you sort of came up with these ideas, Italian Dad also sort of changed over time a little bit. And I think that wouldn't have necessarily happened if you weren't also behind the scenes, like writing and doing all the research and watching these clips of interviews, and you know, you had all these things in your head. I could see your character change based on like what you thought would work and play off of it and stuff like that. So, and that also plays to your strengths. I think that helps if, you know, she's doing so much. I mean, really, she just made my job very easy. I just had to point and shoot.
But I would say too, it's very important to have a hype woman. You know what I mean? Like, especially when you're alone in a solo. I feel like for me, I've always done a lot of solo work, and something that took me a while to realize, like, I think like most people who do a lot of solo work, like Fleabag came out, we all were like, oh, I want to be like Fleabag. And the thing that really shook me about Fleabag was like, Phoebe Waller-Bridge had a whole team behind her. And she had a specific hype woman who was her director of the original solo show. And she speaks very fondly of that woman and how that woman really like hyped her up. And obviously we had done a lot of projects together, but that was something that was really eye-opening for me in terms of like, you know, yeah, it is a solo project. Like, yeah, I do have to wear a hat, so a lot is on me. But finding that support group, those people who you trust to give feedback on, those people that you trust to read the scripts, even if they're just friends, maybe they're not involved in the project or whatever, that was really foundational. And that was, I mean, Emily likes to say she didn't do anything, but she did a lot. So, so I feel like that's something to keep in mind too for people really interested in solo work, is that like it still takes a village.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask Kareema a similar question and then bounce back to the audience in case anyone has one. So I don't know the structure of the organization. Can you tell me the name of the organization that you've created again?
Oh, okay. So, yeah, no, I will tell you backstory. I did not create Kindred.
Okay.
But basically, the company Meredith has a few brands that they own magazines. And so at the time, this is like right after George Floyd, they came to their Black employees and said, hey, are there any topics, are there any areas where we might have missed that, you know, we haven't focused on, because there was no Black focused brand at this company. And everyone unanimously responded with, we want something that focuses on family. And so Parents was already a brand that they had, and they said, hey, how can we be more inclusive and, you know, just of what's going on. And so they all formed Kindred. And so as a result of Kindred, naturally any magazine that you see out there, they always have some kind of video component, since not everyone wants to read anymore. It shows the power of video still. And so that's when I was hired. And they tasked me with coming up with different series for the brand that could expose the audience to Black family dynamics. And so We Live and We Learn is one of 4 series that I created for the brand.
Amazing. That's amazing. Does anyone from the audience have a question? Robert? Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead, Robert.
Kareema, I just want it's such a joy to watch your family members talking and being so candid. I'm interested to know, how was it drawing out these answers from different people in your family? How easy or how difficult was it to get them to open up?
That's a good question. And what's beautiful about even this too, to what you're saying, some of the folks, if they weren't directly related to me, they were part of my village. With like Doris and her son, and my hype woman Sherlyn and her sister, who are first generation Haitian American. Like they were part of my village because I was just like, I have to make this happen in like 2 days. Who are my people? Like literally kindred. Who are my folks? And so it was great. It was really good. Like I said, my grandmother was on her best behavior. So she, answered the questions very nicely. But I think everyone was just open and trusted me as a director, which was really nice. And they wanted this because they saw how necessary it was to have a series like this that exists where people can come and look and say, y'all talked about that too? Or, yeah, I had to address that with my son. Like, they understood the importance of it, so they were willing.
That touched on my question. So.
Okay, cool.
I have a question, and I'm sorry if I missed this because I was in and out. Has your dad seen it?
No, he got script approval. He got script approval. It was so funny actually. I like broached the, I did before I even started. I was like, let me just make sure at the beginning that this is fine. And so I went to him and I was like, Dad, I've designed a show. It's a late night show. It stars you. And he was like, oh. And I was walking him through it. I was like pitching him. I was like, okay, you're gonna do this and you're gonna do this. And he was like, whoa, that Italian dad does a lot. Was his response. And I was like, are you cool with that? Is that fine? Like, how do you feel about that? And he was like, I knew you were going to do it one day. Like, he was like, it was a matter of time. He was like, I guess this is why you were born. And I was like, okay, thank you. Cool. So yeah, so he was in on it, and he read the script and he got script approval. And he was like, even the script, I was like, okay, Dad, take your time. I really want to make sure I'm like respecting you. He like flipped through it. He was like, it's fine. I was like, okay.
One thing I'll say, and I told Kareema last night at the opening night party. So the way it was screened is the order that I watched it. So I watched We Live and We Learn first and cried, but mainly because I couldn't fully relate to it, and then watched Pops from Russia. I'm like, yeah, that hard dad, that makes a lot more sense. And then you're like in the middle, because it's same, immigrant parents from South Africa, grew up in Canada, and it's like this whole, and Pops is really, really good. Like, I think it's on TV in Russia. It takes you on a whole journey because they're driving to go see him, because he was stubborn and didn't come for his 70th birthday. So it was like really, really emotional, this whole block. Like, yeah, obviously what we put things together, the way that we put them together, and it was the same thing, like the immigrant dad who's really, really funny. In real life, my dad is like so funny. It's too bad because they're only arriving tonight. They're at the airport right now, so he won't see this, but I mean, I could send it to them. But yeah, just the different ways. But then also, like, we also have a really big family, so I could also relate to, like, just me personally relate to your film, because it's the same thing. It's always different generations. Like, there's a big South African population in Canada, and also we've gone back home to Cape Town a lot. So I really love this block. I'm so glad that I was able to watch it and wasn't like screaming or on a laptop working.
Yeah, I was going to say both of our works, something they kind of touched on earlier, but that was really interesting, is like, how do we give back to those people, right, the influences that we have, whether they are good or most of the time complicated. What are the things that we choose to highlight about them and celebrate about them, or maybe not, in the case of Pops. But, that was something that I found really profound about your piece as well.
Yeah, no, I was going to say thank you. Thank you for including us. Thank you so much for including us in this block of family. Like, we don't get to see that too often in web festivals, you know what I mean? Or like any film festivals, really. So it's our roots. It's who makes us who we are. So
I think, and like to echo what Robert was saying too, but it was just a really refreshing. It was a refreshing stance, and both of them really Like, we're sort of making fun of where we're from, but it's part of who we are, and then just seeing the different generations as well. It's really beautiful. You guys did an amazing job.
Thank you for having us.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, I'd like our filmmakers, artists up here to tell us, and the people who are watching online, how they could watch more of your work if they wanted, and then we'll close it down.
Absolutely. So you can check out Kindred by Parents on parents.com. You can check out We Live and We Learn on YouTube. Make sure you include Kindred in the search. You can follow us at Kindred by Parents on Instagram, Twitter. Find us on Facebook. You can follow me, my filmmaking journey, Kareema B, at Yes, It's Kareema B, just the letter B, on Instagram. I'm happy to hear from everybody.
Yeah, so I'll be posting them on Instagram and Facebook in the coming weeks. So you can follow me at MLOLADI, so MLOLADI, on both of those platforms. If you're really hankering for it, you can go to marinademarzo.com and watch all 5 episodes right now. Yeah, you can follow me there.
I should have said KareemaB.com too.
Gotta get the .coms in there.
I'm just going to be behind the camera for a lot of that stuff. So, marina.marzo.com.
Wonderful. JasmineDorothy.com. We'll see you guys all after the break. Thank you so much for being here. And another round of applause for our filmmakers, please.